The air was thick with anticipation as I sat in the corner of the bustling cafe, the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee mingling with the faint scent of rain-soaked earth from the open windows. My fingers traced the rim of my porcelain cup, its warmth seeping into my skin, grounding me against the tumultuous sea of my thoughts. A familiar figure slipped through the doorway, shaking off droplets of rain from his umbrella, and for a moment, time seemed to suspend itself. It had been 5 years since that fateful day when the world I knew had shattered like fragile glass. Just before the vows, he had walked away, leaving behind a trail of whispered apologies and a heart that would take years to mend. Kaito had been everything, my confidant, my partner, my dearest friend. Yet, in a heartbeat, he'd become a ghost haunting the corridors of my memories. As he approached, his eyes, those deep, stormy eyes, met mine, and I felt a familiar pang of longing mixed with trepidation. He sat across. From me, his presence a complex melody of remorse and hope. The cafe buzzed around us, yet it seemed as if we were ensconced in a bubble, our own little world where the past and present collided. "I'm glad you came," Kaito began, his voice a soft murmur carrying the weight of unspoken words. I nodded, unsure of what to say in the face of such vulnerability. Time had etched subtle lines across his face, a testament to years we had spent apart, growing and changing in ways we couldn't have imagined. I almost didn't, I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. But then I realized there are things that need to be said, for both our sakes. Kaito's gaze held mine, and I could see the conflict within him, the struggle between the man he had been and the man he aspired to be. "I've thought about that day every single one since," he admitted, his voice tinged with a raw honesty that pierced through the armor I had so carefully constructed. I was a coward, running away from something I should have embraced. I know I hurt you, and I can't change the past, but I'm here now, hoping for a second chance. His words hung in the air, a fragile offering that trembled with sincerity. I felt the familiar pull of emotions, anger, sadness, but above all, a profound sense of yearning for what could have been. Yet, I had learned to navigate life on my own terms, my path illuminated by the lessons of solitude and resilience. "I'm different now, Kaito," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I've built a life that I'm proud of, found strength in my independence. I'm not sure if there's room for us in that life." Kaito leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I know I'm asking for a lot, but even if it's just friendship, I want to be a part of your life again. I want to prove that I'm not the same person who left you at the altar." A part of me ached to reach across the table, to bridge the chasm between us with a touch, but the scars of the past held me back. "I need time," I said finally, my heart heavy with the weight of possibilities. Time to understand what it is I truly want. The rain outside had softened to a gentle drizzle, casting a muted glow through the window panes, and as we sat in silence, the future unfurled before us, uncertain, yet filled with the promise of healing and redemption. As I stood to leave, Kaito reached for my hand, a hesitant, hopeful gesture. "Thank you," he said, and there was a quiet strength in his voice, a determination to mend what had been broken. I nodded, my heart a complex tapestry of emotions. "We'll see where this journey takes us," I replied as I walked into the rain, feeling the cool droplets kiss my skin, each step echoing with the promise of new beginnings. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone streets of Harukawa, its warm hues painting the town in shades of nostalgia. I found myself wandering these familiar paths, the place where our story had begun and ended, only to be rewritten once more. The scent of cherry blossoms lingered in the air, mingling with the soft rustle of leaves, a bittersweet serenade to my rumination. As I strolled past the quaint little tea house where we had spent countless afternoons dreaming of our future, my heart clenched involuntarily. It was here, in this very spot, that Aki had first proposed, his eyes alight with a promise of forever. But forever had been fleeting, shattering like a delicate porcelain cup dropped from careless hands. His words, "I can't marry you," echoed in my mind, as vivid now as they were on that fateful day. The years that followed, were a blur of solitude and self-discovery. I had fled Harukawa, seeking solace in the bustling city of Kyoto, where I hoped to lose myself in the chaos of urban life. Yet, in the heart of that vibrant metropolis, I found an unexpected clarity. The noise became a backdrop to my thoughts, allowing me to piece together the fragments of my broken heart. I immersed myself in my work, pouring my soul into each brushstroke as an art restorer, breathing life back into faded masterpieces. It was a career I had stumbled upon, yet it became my refuge, each canvas a silent confessor to my untold stories. I had believed I was healing, but deep within, there lingered an emptiness that refused to be filled. Then, out of the blue, a letter arrived. Its envelope was simple, yet the familiar scrawl of my name sent a jolt through me. Aki. He was back in Harukawa, and he wanted to meet. Against my better judgment, I agreed, driven by a mixture of curiosity and an unspoken yearning that had never truly died. Meeting him again was like stepping into a time capsule. He had changed, yet remained hauntingly the same. His eyes still held that depthless sincerity, but now they bore the weight of regret. We sat across from each other in a cafe, the silence between us punctuated by the clinking of cups and the murmur of distant conversations. "I'm sorry, Yuki," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life." I looked at him, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, sadness, hope, each vying for dominance. I wanted to demand why he had left me standing alone at the altar of our dreams. But the answers seemed less important than the man before me now, his vulnerability laid bare. "Why now, Aki?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tempest inside. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it tugged at my heart. "I've spent these years trying to find myself, to understand what I truly wanted, and every path led back to you." There was a sincerity in his words that resonated with a truth I had tried to bury. Yet the scars were still fresh, the pain a constant reminder of our unfinished story. I couldn't simply erase the years of hurt with a few heartfelt words. "I've changed, Aki," I replied, my gaze unwavering. "I'm not the same person I was back then." He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Neither am I, but maybe we can find who we've become together." His words hung in the air, a promise of redemption, of a second chance at the love we had lost. But could we truly rebuild what had been broken? My heart ached with the possibility, yet fear clung to the edges of my resolve. As we parted ways under the fading light, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. It was fragile, like the first bloom of spring pushing through the winter frost. Yet, it held the potential for something beautiful, an unwritten chapter waiting to be penned. I returned to my apartment, the familiarity of its walls a comforting embrace. As I lay in bed, the city's distant hum lulling me to sleep, I realized that this was only the beginning. The past may have shaped us, but it was the choices we made now that would define our future. I closed my eyes, whispering a silent prayer to the stars, for courage, for clarity, and for the strength to open my heart once more. As the cherry blossoms began to blanket the city streets like a delicate pink snowfall, I found myself standing on the balcony of my modest apartment, sipping a cup of lukewarm green tea. The fragrance of the blooms mixed with the crisp morning air, creating an intoxicating blend of nostalgia and renewal. It was the season of beginnings and endings, a time when memories felt both distant and vivid. It had been 5 years since the day my world had crumbled beneath me, when Ryuji, the man I once thought I'd spend my life with, had called off our wedding in a rushed whisper over the phone. I never understood why he had disappeared so suddenly, leaving behind nothing but an echo of his laughter and a ring that now lay hidden in a dusty drawer. The pain had been a constant companion since, a shadow that lingered even in moments of joy. Yet, life had a peculiar way of moving forward, even when we felt rooted in place. I had thrown myself into my work, immersing myself in the world of books at the local library, where the scent of paper and ink provided a sanctuary. The patrons had become familiar faces, and among them was Haruto, a quiet, introspective man who frequented the library, always searching for the next great novel to lose himself in. Despite his reserved nature, Haruto and I had formed a tentative friendship, our conversations often drifting into the realm of literature and the human condition. There was a warmth in his presence, a steady comfort that seemed to ease the lingering ache within me. He never pried into my past, allowing me the space to heal at my own pace. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the library floor, Haruto approached me with a gentle smile. "Do you believe in second chances?" he asked, his eyes holding a flicker of curiosity. The question seemed to linger in the air, and I hesitated, unsure how to respond. "I think everyone deserves a chance to make things right," I replied cautiously, the words feeling both true and foreign on my tongue. His gaze softened, and for a moment, I thought I saw something deeper flickering beneath his calm exterior. But before I could delve further, the library's closing bell chimed, and the moment slipped away like sand through my fingers. Days turned into weeks, and as spring fully embraced the city, life continued its relentless march forward. Yet, an unexpected letter arrived one breezy afternoon, its envelope bearing a familiar handwriting that sent my heart into a chaotic dance. It was from Ryuji. With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter, each word pulling me deeper into a whirlpool of emotions I had long buried. Ryuji wrote of regret, of mistakes weighed heavily by time, and a longing to see me, to explain, to beg for another chance. His words were raw and unguarded, and as I read them, the memories of our past love came rushing back, sharp and poignant. The conflict within me was tumultuous. Part of me wanted to crumple the letter and toss it aside, to shield myself from reopening a wound that had barely healed. But another part, the part that still remembered the warmth of Ryuji's embrace and the dreams we once shared, urged me to consider his plea. I found myself at a crossroads, the path ahead shrouded in uncertainty. Haruto's question echoed in my mind. Did I believe in second chances? The answer was elusive, a whisper in the wind. The following morning, as I wandered through the park where Ryuji and I had spent countless afternoons, I noticed the cherry blossoms were at their peak, their petals dancing gracefully in the breeze. In that moment, I realized that life, much like the seasons, was a cycle of change and rebirth. Perhaps, just perhaps, it was time to confront the past and see if love could truly bloom again after such a long, harsh winter. As the petals fell around me like a gentle rain, I made my decision. I would meet Ryuji and hear him out, not only for him, but for myself. To seek closure, understanding, and perhaps a new beginning. The path was uncertain, but it was mine to walk, and with each step, I felt a strange mix of fear and hope intertwine. Life was a tapestry of moments, woven together by choices both big and small. And in this moment, I chose to open my heart once more, to see where this newfound journey might lead. The rain drummed softly against the windowpane, mirroring the rhythm of my heart as I sat in the small cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the scent of wet earth. This was where it all began, and where it all seemed to fall apart. A place once filled with laughter and dreams, now haunted by echoes of broken promises. It had been 5 years since Adrian had called off our wedding, 5 long years of reconstructing my life from the shattered pieces of that day. I remembered the way his voice trembled, the uncertainty in his eyes, and the heavy silence that followed. The world I had envisioned crumbled in an instant, leaving behind a chasm of unanswered questions and aching regrets. Yet, here I was, drawn back to this place by his unexpected message, a simple yet profound request for another chance. The thought alone was a tightrope between hope and fear, swaying with every breath I took. I clutched my coffee cup, the warmth seeping into my fingers, grounding me in the present as I waited for Adrian to arrive. The doorbell chimed, a soft jingle that snapped me from my reverie. He entered, his presence immediately commanding the room with an air of familiarity and change. Adrian looked different. The boyish charm had matured into something more refined, yet his eyes still held that same spark, a kind of earnest longing that pulled at my heart. As he approached, I braced myself, a swirl of emotions tightening in my chest. He offered a tentative smile, and for a moment I was transported back to the days when that smile meant everything. "Hi, Hannah," he said, his voice a low melody that resonated with unspoken apologies. "Adrian," I replied, striving to keep my tone neutral, though the tremor betrayed me. We sat across from each other, the table between us an invisible barrier of past and present. "I know I hurt you," he began, his gaze steady yet vulnerable. "Walking away was the hardest decision I've ever made, and not a day goes by that I don't regret it." I swallowed hard, the words I had rehearsed dissolving into the air. "Why now, Adrian? Why after all these years?" He hesitated, a flicker of pain crossing his features. "I was scared, Hannah, of failing you, of not being the man you deserved. But losing you taught me more than I could have imagined. I've spent these years trying to become better, for myself and for you." His confession hung between us, a poignant reminder of what once was and what could be. The cafe's gentle buzz faded into the background as I wrestled with the torrent of emotions his presence stirred. Part of me ached to forgive, to embrace the possibility of love reborn, while another part clung to the fear of history repeating itself. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," Adrian continued, his voice a soft plea. "But I want to show you that I've changed, that I can be the man you need." His sincerity was palpable, weaving a fragile thread of hope through the fabric of my doubts. I met his gaze, searching for the truth in his eyes, a truth I desperately wanted to believe. "Adrian, I need time," I said finally, my voice firm yet gentle. "Time to see if we can truly rebuild what was lost." Relief washed over his features, and he nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "I'll give you all the time you need, Hannah. I just want the chance to prove myself to you." As we parted ways, the rain had stopped, leaving the world fresh and renewed. I stepped outside, the cool breeze brushing against my skin, carrying with it the scent of possibilities. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt a stir of hope fluttering within, a hope that perhaps, love could find its way back to us. As the rain drizzled down, casting a silvery veil over the city, I found myself staring out of the cafe window, the steam from my coffee mingling with the cool air. It was here, in this quaint little corner of our bustling town, that I often came to lose myself in the rhythmic dance of raindrops. This place, with its worn wooden tables and the comforting aroma of freshly baked pastries, had become a silent sanctuary over the years. It had been 3 years since the day I stood in a white dress, my heart pounding with a blend of anticipation and love, only to have that love shattered by a single phone call. "I can't do this." His voice had trembled, and my world had crumbled like the fragile edges of a dried leaf. I had spent countless nights questioning where it all went wrong, dissecting every memory for signs I might have missed. In the years that followed, I built a life from the fragments left behind, weaving strength and independence into a tapestry that felt uniquely my own. I had learned to find joy in solitude, peace in the chaos of everyday life, and a quiet confidence that I thought might never return. But today, something was different. A soft chime of the bell above the cafe door pulled me from my reverie. I glanced up, my heart skipping a beat, as Ethan walked in, his presence as familiar as it was unexpected. His hair was slightly longer, his face etched with lines of time and regret, but those eyes, the ones that once promised forever, still held the same depth and warmth. I turned my gaze back to my coffee, willing the thrumming of my heart to steady. He approached cautiously, the clinking of his footsteps echoing louder with each step. "May I join you?" he asked, his voice gentle, almost pleading. I nodded, unsure of my own voice. The air between us was thick with unsaid words, a palpable tension that neither of us seemed ready to break. He sat across from me, the small table suddenly feeling like a vast chasm. "I know I have no right to ask for your time," he began, his hands clasped tightly together. "But I've thought about this moment every day, replaying it in my mind, hoping for the chance to explain." I met his gaze, searching his eyes for answers I wasn't sure I wanted. "Ethan, why now? After all these years?" My voice was steady, though my heart felt anything but. He sighed, a sound laden with the weight of unspoken apologies. "Because I was a coward, and I ran from something beautiful. I convinced myself that I wasn't ready, that I didn't deserve the happiness we had. And by the time I realized how wrong I was, it felt too late to make things right." His words hung in the air between us, raw and honest. Part of me wanted to reach across the table, to bridge the years of distance and pain, but another part of me clung to the hurt, the betrayal that still lingered like a shadow. "I don't expect forgiveness," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I want to try, if there's even a chance for us to start over, to rebuild what I broke." The rain outside had picked up, a soft symphony that mirrored the storm within me. I watched the droplets race down the window, each one carrying with it a memory, a moment from our past that felt both distant and vivid. "Ethan," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor I felt inside, "you hurt me more than I ever thought possible. I've spent years trying to move forward, to find myself again. And now you're here, asking for another chance. It's not that simple." His eyes met mine, and in that moment, I saw a flicker of the man I had once loved so deeply. "I know," he replied, his voice steady with conviction. "But I promise you, I've changed. I've spent these years learning, growing, and realizing just how much you mean to me." The cafe's warmth enveloped us, a stark contrast to the chill of uncertainty that lingered. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words settle around us like a fragile, hopeful promise. There was so much to consider, so much to unravel, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was a sliver of possibility hidden in the storm. The scent of cherry blossoms lingered in the air as I wandered through the park, their delicate petals swirling around me like a pastel-colored tempest. It had been years since that fateful day when the world as I knew it crumbled around me. The day when he, my once beloved, canceled our wedding without a whisper of warning. I had worn the pain like a cloak, its weight so familiar that I almost forgot how to live without it. Yet here I was, surrounded by the vibrant colors of spring, a season that taunted me with promises of new beginnings. Everything around me seemed to echo with the laughter of lovers, the quiet conversations of those who still believed in forever. I tried to focus on the present, on the gentle breeze that stirred my hair, but my heart betrayed me, dragging my thoughts back to the past. "Amaya!" a voice called out, familiar, and yet almost forgotten. It was him, Hiroshi, standing at the edge of the path, his eyes a storm of emotions. Time had changed him. The youthful arrogance I once adored had softened into something infinitely more complex. I stopped, the world narrowing to just the two of us. My pulse quickened, a traitorous reminder of old feelings, but I forced myself to stand tall. "Hiroshi," I acknowledged, my voice steady, though my heart was anything but. He stepped closer, the distance between us shrinking, yet feeling like an ocean. "I've thought about this moment for years," he began, his voice tinged with an unfamiliar vulnerability that caught me off guard. "I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I need you to understand why I did what I did." I wanted to demand answers, to hurl accusations, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded, urging him to continue. "I was scared, Amaya," he confessed, his eyes searching mine. "Scared of the responsibility, scared of failing. You, as a husband. I thought I was protecting us by walking away, but I was wrong, so terribly wrong." His words hung in the air, a fragile bridge between past and present. I felt the old hurt rising, but alongside it was something else, a flicker of understanding. "You left me alone, Hiroshi," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do you have any idea what that did to me?" He lowered his gaze, guilt etched into every line of his face. "Not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted it. I've spent these years trying to become someone worthy of you, someone who can face his fears." I studied him, searching for signs of the man I once loved. The sincerity in his eyes was undeniable, a beacon cutting through the fog of doubt. Yet, the wounds he left were deep, and I knew the path to healing would not be easy. "Why now?" I asked, needing to understand the timing of his reappearance. He drew a deep breath, the kind that seemed to draw strength from the very earth beneath our feet. "Because I've learned that love isn't about being fearless. It's about facing those fears together, and I want to do that with you, Amaya. If you'll let me." His words were like a key, unlocking a door within me that I had long thought sealed. The possibility of a future with him shimmered before me, fragile yet achingly real. I took a step back, needing space to think, to breathe. The truth was, despite everything, part of me still loved him. But love alone couldn't erase the past or guarantee a future. "I need time, Hiroshi," I finally said, my voice firmer now, tinged with the strength I had found in his absence. "Time to see if the person I've become can forgive the person you were." He nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I'll wait, Amaya, for as long as it takes." As I turned to leave, the cherry blossoms continued their dance around us, a promise of renewal in their gentle descent. I walked away, my heart a tumult of emotions, each step a testament to the journey that lay ahead. The road to forgiveness and rediscovery stretched out before me, a winding path through the shadows of the past and into the light of what might be. The rain fell in a steady rhythm against my umbrella as I made my way down the familiar streets of Shinjuku. The city lights reflected in the puddles, creating a kaleidoscope of colors that danced beneath my feet. I couldn't help but feel nostalgic, memories of my time with Haruto resurfacing with every step. The aroma of yakitori from a nearby stand mingled with the fresh scent of rain, pulling me further into a reverie of the past. It had been 5 years since Haruto had left me standing alone at the altar, surrounded by the soft murmurs of concerned guests and the rustle of my wedding gown. 5 years since I had mustered the strength to rebuild my life, brick by brick, from the ashes of heartbreak. And now, here he was, back in my life, asking for another chance as if time had not passed, as if I had not changed. I reached the entrance of the small cafe where we had agreed to meet. The sign above the door swung slightly in the breeze, and I hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The warmth enveloped me, a stark contrast to the chill outside. The soft strains of jazz music played in the background, and the air was thick with the comforting scent of freshly brewed coffee. Haruto was already seated at a corner table, his posture tense, his gaze fixed on the steam rising from his cup. He looked older, the lines on his face deeper, his eyes holding a sorrow that mirrored my own. As I approached, he stood up, a hesitant smile playing on his lips. "Miyako," he greeted, his voice a familiar melody that tugged at my heart. "Haruto," I replied, taking a seat opposite him. Silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. I watched as he struggled to find the right words, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "I never stopped thinking about you," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life." Anger flared within me, a hot, fierce thing that I had thought long extinguished. "And yet you did," I replied, my voice icy. "You left without a word, without an explanation." He flinched, the weight of my accusation settling between us. "I was scared," he admitted, his eyes meeting mine with a vulnerability I had never seen before. "Scared of failing you, of being unable to give you the life you deserved." I took a deep breath, the air thick with tension. "And now? What makes you think things are different?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. "I've changed, Miyako. I've learned from my mistakes. I want to make things right, to build a future with you." I wanted to believe him, to allow myself the hope of a new beginning. But the scars of the past were still tender, and the fear of history repeating itself loomed large. "I need time," I said finally, my voice steady but firm. "Time to think, to understand if this is what I truly want." His face fell, but he nodded, understanding etched in his features. "I can wait," he promised, his gaze unwavering. "For as long as it takes." As we parted ways, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the city lights. I walked home, the weight of our conversation heavy on my shoulders. Memories of the promises we had once made together played on loop in my mind, each one a bittersweet reminder of what could have been. In the days that followed, I found myself lost in thought, the world around me fading into the background. I sought solace in the familiar, the small joys that had sustained me through the years of Haruto's absence. Yet, his reappearance had stirred something within me, a longing for the connection we once shared. I found myself lingering by the window of the small flower shop on my street, the scent of cherry blossoms wrapping around me like a gentle embrace. It was here, surrounded by the delicate blooms, that I felt a glimmer of clarity. Life was fragile, fleeting, and perhaps too short to let fear dictate the choices of the heart. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I picked up my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I dialed Haruto's number. The call connected, and his voice came through, warm and hopeful. "Haruto," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "Let's meet tomorrow. We need to talk." As I hung up, a sense of calm settled over me. Whatever the future held, I knew I was ready to face it, to confront the shadows of the past and embrace the possibility of a new beginning. The cold wind swept through the bustling streets of Harkazi City, whispering secrets of the past amongst the fallen cherry blossoms. I stood in front of the cafe where we used to meet, the memory of that day etched into my mind like a ghost I couldn't shake. It was 3 years ago when the world I had meticulously crafted crumbled beneath me, the echoes of his words still haunting my thoughts. "I can't do this, Aiko." He had canceled our wedding just days before we were to vow forever. The pain of that moment lingered like an unwelcome guest, settling in the corners of my heart. I had moved on, or so I believed, finding solace in the familiar routines of life, the warmth of friends, and the quiet moments of solitude that had become my sanctuary. Yet, as I stood there, the city around me seemed to hum with an energy I couldn't ignore. My phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the trance. It was a message from Kato, my childhood friend and confidant. "Meet me at the old bridge," it read, cryptically. The old bridge was a place of nostalgia, where we had spent countless afternoons dreaming of futures that seemed impossibly far away. I made my way there, the cityscape unfolding around me like a painted canvas, the colors vibrant and alive in the fading light. When I arrived, Kaito was waiting, his familiar silhouette framed against the dusky sky. His presence was a balm, a reminder of the enduring connections that had carried me through life's storms. "Aiko," he began, his voice a comforting melody. "There's something you need to know." I braced myself, sensing the weight of his words. "What is it, Kaito?" He hesitated, a rare moment of uncertainty crossing his usually steady features. "It's about Takumi." Takumi. The name was a shard of glass, sharp and buried deep. "What about him?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "He's back in town," Kaito said, his eyes searching mine for a reaction. "And he wants to see you." The world seemed to tilt for a moment, the ground shifting beneath my feet. Takumi, the man who had walked away from everything we had dreamed of, was back. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions, anger, curiosity, a flicker of something that could have been hope. "I don't know if I can," I confessed, the admission hanging heavy in the air. "After everything." Kaito nodded, understanding clear in his gaze. "You don't have to decide anything now, but maybe, just maybe, this is an opportunity for closure." Closure. The word tasted bittersweet. Could I truly find it after all this time? As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of violet and gold, I realized that part of me craved answers. The parts of my heart that still bore the scars of the past longed for resolution, for the chance to finally move on. The days that followed were a blur of contemplation and restless nights. I found myself replaying memories of Takumi, our laughter, the promises we made under the starlit sky, and the dreams we had once woven together. Each recollection was a tapestry of emotion, intricate and complex. It was during one of these reflective moments, as I wandered through the city's quiet park, that I saw him. Takumi stood by the pond, the gentle breeze ruffling his dark hair, his expression pensive as he stared into the water. My heart skipped a beat, a mix of dread and anticipation coursing through me. He turned, and for a moment, our eyes met. There was a vulnerability in his gaze, a silent plea that tugged at the edges of my resolve. I took a deep breath, each step toward him feeling like a journey through time and space. As I approached, the world around us seemed to fall away, leaving only the two of us standing on the precipice of what once was and what could be. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand, stopping him. "Why now, Takumi?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with the echoes of old wounds. He hesitated, a flicker of regret in his eyes. "I made a mistake, Aiko. I was scared, and I ran. But I've spent every day since then thinking about what I lost." His words hung in the air, a fragile truth that trembled on the edge of possibility. I felt a familiar tug at my heart, a whisper of the connection that had once bound us so deeply. But this time, I would not be swept away by dreams and promises. This time, I needed to know if the man standing before me was truly the person I had once believed him to be. The stakes had never been higher, and the path forward was uncertain, but the journey was one I knew I had to take, to find closure, to seek forgiveness, and perhaps to rediscover the love that had once burned so brightly. The rain drummed a soft melody against the window pane, painting the world outside in hues of muted gray. It was the kind of day that invited introspection, where memories surfaced as if summoned by the rhythmic patter. I sat by the window, clutching a mug of steaming tea, its warmth a comforting contrast to the chill seeping through the glass. My gaze drifted to the horizon, where the cityscape blurred into indistinct lines, much like the boundaries between past and present in my mind. Years had passed since that fateful day, the day he canceled our wedding. I remember the way he stood there, eyes downcast, words tumbling from his lips like autumn. Leaves caught in a gust. "I'm not ready," he'd said, his voice barely a whisper. Back then, his words cut deeper than any blade, leaving wounds that time had only partially healed. Life moved on, as life tends to do. I threw myself into my work, pouring every ounce of energy into building a career, crafting a life that was mine alone. I traveled to distant lands, met people who colored my world with their stories, their laughter, their kindness. Each experience was a stitch in the tapestry of my new existence, vibrant and intricate, yet tinged with the shadows of what could have been. But shadows have a way of creeping back, especially when you least expect them. It was a few weeks ago when his name flashed across my phone screen, a ghost from the past reaching out from the ether. My heart skipped, then resumed its steady rhythm with a thud of trepidation. Curiosity warred with caution as I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the answer button. Eventually, curiosity won. The conversation was awkward, punctuated by silences that felt like chasms. He spoke of change, of growth, of a yearning to reconnect. His voice was a familiar melody, yet laced with unfamiliar notes of regret and longing. He wanted to meet, to talk, to explain. Against my better judgment, I agreed. And so here I was, on the cusp of confronting a chapter I thought I'd closed. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle by the time I left my apartment, each step accompanied by the soft splash of puddles. The cafe where we agreed to meet was a cozy nook tucked away in a quiet alley, its warm glow spilling onto the cobblestones like a beacon. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, his fingers tracing patterns on the rim of his coffee cup. He looked up as I approached, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. Time had etched its mark on him, adding lines of wisdom, of experience, of something I couldn't quite place. "Thank you for coming," he said, standing, awkwardly before motioning for me to sit. His sincerity was palpable, and I found myself nodding, the tension in my shoulders slowly unwinding. We talked, our conversation a delicate dance of words and emotions. He spoke of the years apart, of the soul-searching that led him back to this moment. Each word was a brushstroke, painting a picture of a man who had faced his demons and emerged changed, yet still intrinsically the same. As he spoke, I felt the walls around my heart begin to crack, the barriers I had erected to protect myself from the pain of the past. His apology was heartfelt, a balm for old wounds, and yet, could I truly let go of the hurt, the betrayal, the dreams that had crumbled beneath the weight of his hesitation? "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," he said, his voice a gentle rumble in the intimate space between us. "I just wanted you to know that I regret what happened, that I miss us." His words hung in the air, a fragile promise of what might be. I looked into his eyes, searching for answers, for certainty, for something that would guide my next step. But the truth was, there were no easy answers. Only the quiet, persistent beat of hope against the scars of the past, the possibility of a future we might forge anew. The cafe was dimming, the twilight casting long shadows as the world outside slipped into a dusky embrace. I stood, a decision not yet made, but a journey begun. "Let's take it one day at a time," I said, offering a tentative smile that felt like the first rays of sun after a long storm. He nodded, understanding the unspoken agreement between us, to explore this new path with caution, with honesty, with hope. As we stepped out into the cool embrace of evening, the rain had ceased, leaving the air crisp and clear, a perfect backdrop for new beginnings, whatever they might bring. The rain fell softly against the window pane, each drop a gentle reminder of the tumultuous storm that had once raged within me. It had been 5 years since that day, a day that was supposed to mark the beginning of a forever, but instead marked the beginning of an end. The memory of standing alone in the chapel, surrounded by a sea of abandoned flowers and unfulfilled promises, was etched into my mind. Yet here I was, gazing out at the world with a heart that was no longer broken, just slightly bruised. Life had a way of stitching wounds in its own time, and I had learned to embrace the new threads it wove into my existence. I found solace in art, in the way colors danced across a canvas, capturing emotions that words could never fully convey. My gallery had become my sanctuary, a haven where I could lose myself among the strokes and shades, creating beauty from the chaos of my past. But today, as I stood behind the counter, arranging a new display, the chime of the doorbell pulled me back to the present. The sound was familiar, yet there was an unsettling undertone, a whisper of something unresolved. I looked up to see him, a ghost, from the past, yet undeniably real, standing there with eyes that held both regret and hope. "Amelia," he began, his voice carrying the weight of years unspoken. "Lucas," I replied, my own voice a mix of surprise and guarded emotion. His presence was a paradox, a reminder of what had been lost and what could never be reclaimed. "I know I have no right to be here," he continued, stepping slowly towards me, each step a careful negotiation of the space between us. "But I need to explain. I need to ask for forgiveness." Forgiveness. A word that seemed both daunting and liberating. I had spent years learning to forgive myself for ever believing in a future that vanished like smoke. Could I now find it in my heart to forgive the man who had ignited that dream only to extinguish it? "I moved on, Lucas," I said, trying to steady the tremor in my voice. Or at least, I tried to. His eyes softened, reflecting a sincerity I hadn't seen the last time we stood face to face. "I was a coward, Amelia. I was scared of the future, of failing you. But I've changed. The years apart have made me realize what I truly lost." There was an honesty in his confession, a vulnerability that tugged at the strings of my heart. Yet, doubt lingered like a shadow, whispering caution. "Why now?" I asked, searching for answers in eyes that once held my world. "Because I spent every day wishing I had been braver. Because I can't let another moment pass without trying to make things right," he replied, his voice unwavering. Silence enveloped us, the gallery bearing witness to the unspoken words and unresolved emotions. The paintings on the walls seemed to watch, each stroke a testament to the journey I had undertaken alone. I crossed my arms, a small barrier against the flood of emotions threatening to consume me. "Lucas, what exactly do you want from me?" "Another chance," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet filled with conviction. "A chance to prove that I can be the man you deserve. A chance to write the story we never finished." His plea hung in the air, mingling with the scent of paint and possibility. My heart teetered on the edge of past pain and the potential for something new, something beautiful. Could I trust him, trust myself, to navigate the complexities of a love once lost? As I contemplated his words, a memory flickered, a time when love was free and unburdened by fear. It was a memory that brought warmth amidst the chill of uncertainty. "I need time," I finally said, my voice a fragile bridge between forgiveness and the future. "Time to understand if this is genuinely what we both want, if we've truly changed." Lucas nodded, his expression a mix of relief and understanding. "I'll wait, Amelia, for as long as it takes." His words were a promise, one that echoed through the gallery, blending with the rhythm of the rain. As he turned to leave, I felt a flicker of hope, a possibility that perhaps, amidst the ruins of our past, there lay the foundation for something greater. The door closed behind him, and I was left with the soft patter of rain against the windows and the gentle hum of anticipation. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, the unknown seemed less daunting. I took a deep breath, letting the air fill my lungs with hope and hesitation, ready to explore the path that lay before me.